Hey, what is up, everybody?
And welcome back to Mile Higher Podcast, episode 356. And today, you guys, we're going to be talking about another survival story. We have been enjoying these so much. I think they are so good for our brains, doing so much true crime for a living. Sometimes it can get, a little dark in there. And I think it's good for the audience, too. I know you guys, I always see comments from people saying they love survival stories. And it's good for your brains as well, because I'm sure this is not the only true crime show that you consume. And so it's good to hear some stories of resilience and survival. And boy, do we have that for you today. And we're talking about children who survived.
Survived the most inhospitable environment on the planet, perhaps, and one of the deadliest environments.
Certainly.
The Amazonian jungle.
Oh, just brutal out there, man. 4 kids survived out there for 40 days in the Colombian Amazon.
After crashing in a plane.
Yep.
This story is just, it really puts things into perspective for yourself, because if these kids can survive out in these types of conditions, you really have nothing to complain about in your life.
That's what these stories always do for me. They just are a reminder.
It does. It's like, it's a little hot in my room. You're like, no, it's not. It's not hot.
It's not that bad.
It's just, there's no reason to complain. Yeah,
if
the
you see
bugs.
A bug in your house.
Bugs.
I'm guilty of that. I'll freak out if I see a big spider in my house. But these kids were out there with like poisonous snakes and bugs and spiders, and oh my God.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable story. And there's an amazing, amazing documentary that was made on their story as well. The Children of the Jungle, I believe is what it's called. And that is on Netflix. It is very, very, very good. The soundtrack, I can't say enough good things about. It just really sets the whole mood for the story, because it's not only a story of survival, but there's a greater story of just like partly a tragedy, but also, a story of survival. You have 2 different groups coming together. You have the indigenous people of the Amazon coming together with the military of Colombia to join forces in order to not only find this plane crash and see if there's any survivors, but ultimately find these poor children that are lost out in the rainforest. And these are 2 groups that have not ever really gotten along, because there's been a lot of bloodshed. There's been a lot of violence that has happened, especially on the side of the indigenous peoples. And so to see, you start seeing them come together. It's really, truly a beautiful story. And it just, it really, I don't know, it hits deep. It really does. And just
for so
learning,
many reasons.
And these are indigenous children that we're talking about, and just learning more about their culture and their way of life and just how knowledgeable they are about the rainforest is truly amazing, and something I'm so interested in. It's just, I don't know, they just are so in touch with the earth and the Amazon and the rainforest. It's just on a whole other level, and that is well on display throughout this whole story. So it's an amazing one.
It really is. I'm excited to dive in. But before we do, I'm your host, Kendall.
I'm Josh.
And we are joined by our production team, Janelle and Ian.
Hello.
Howdy, guys.
Hi.
All right. Well, shall we just dive in?
Yeah, let's start. We're gonna give you some background information on some of the events leading up to it, the people involved in the actual plane crash itself, to kind of help give you a more deeper, wider view of really how this all unfolded, beginning with Magdalena, who is the mother of the children who we'll be talking about.
Yeah. So Magdalena Muckatai had lived her whole life within the confines of the Colombian Amazon, knowing how to live off the land and survive with just what the earth could provide. And she was the third of 10 children raised by Fatima Valencia, who goes by just Valencia, and then Narisco too. And she was raised mostly in the outskirts of the Arapahoe, in the extremely remote villages deep in the Colombian Amazon. And electricity was only provided by gas generators and solar panels, and cell service was only available at the village's small landing strip. Arapahoe is geographically isolated. It sits on the edge of a canyon where the Caqueta River flows, and the rapids are so severe that travel by boat is nearly impossible. The village was even the site of a penal colony where Colombia's most dangerous criminals were sent. From 1938 to 1971, criminals were allowed to live outdoors because the escape into the thick rainforest definitely meant they were not going to make it out alive. However, the penal colony eventually collapsed after it could not successfully grow agriculture within the area. The indigenous people of Arapahoe, like Magdalena and her family, had to learn to live off of the land through slash and burn techniques over generations. Now, Magdalena's family were members of the Watoto tribe, and her mother, Valencia, was a village elder who made sure that children understood and respected the surrounding rainforest. In their belief, the Watoto see everything in the jungle, trees, rocks, animals. They see it all as having a powerful spirit attached. And some of these spirits are good, providing crop, safety, and water. However, there are evil spirits, also known as the duendes, that lurk in the shadows and specifically attempt to lead children down dark, dangerous paths. Through rituals and shamans, the Watoto communicate with these spirits, but the duendes can get rid of that ability. According to Valencia, they take out your voice and you cannot scream. While Valencia was a village elder and therefore made sure that her children were well versed in Watoto spiritual practices, she also taught them how to use the rainforest for sustenance, to grow food, and to scavenge safe fruits. Magdalena spent her early childhood in the forest, caring for the local community garden and also playing soccer. In 2005, she competed in the regional tournament in the village of La Chorrera, which is 60 miles away from Arapahoe. Now, she had met a young man named Andres Jacob Bombert, who was a forest ranger and player on the rival team. And after coffee, he asked her out on a proper date, and they spent the evening dancing and eventually kissed. Andres said it was love at first sight and proposed to Magdalena before they quickly had their first two children, Angie and John. In 2010, Magdalena gave birth to her daughter, Leslie, who had the same brown hair and eyes as her mother.
Andre's father was the chief back in La Chorrera, and he taught young Leslie how to fish and hunt monkeys in the jungle. As a child, Leslie spent a lot of time studying the sounds of birds, the names of trees, and of course, safe fruits for human consumption, because of course, there's lots of plants and fruits that can kill you. Andres said this of his daughter: she knew how to defend herself in the jungle, and we prepared her from a very young age. Magdalena then gave birth to their fourth child, Selene, in 2014 while she and Andres were still happily married. However, in June 2016, Andres fell while working, and he feared that he had broken his back and he couldn't speak or move for quite some time. His injuries really took a toll on their marriage, and in 2017, Magdalena left Andres, taking Selene and Leslie with her to live with her parents back in Arapahoe. While home in Arapahoe, Magdalena found work in an illegal mine allegedly run by a rebel group, the Carolina Ramirez Front, which was using Arapahoe's remote airstrip as a transfer point for cocaine shipments to Brazil. And it was in this mine that Magdalena met her second husband, Manuel. Manuel was 26, and although he was very strong, he also had garnered some reputation for bullying others and drinking too much, bit of a wild man. Eventually, the couple moved to an indigenous reservation called Puerto Sabalo, where he was raised, and he became the area's governor. And Magdalena gave birth to two more children, a son named Tien in 2018 and baby Kristen in 2022. Despite Manuel's success, Magdalena's mother, Valencia, really disapproved of their marriage. Manuel had been accused of abusing his ex-wife, and Valencia said that she had even seen him kissing her in the capital of Bogota after his marriage to Magdalena. Other accusations would also come out against him concerning his treatment of Magdalena and her children from her marriage to Andres. However, in April 2023, Manuel fled Puerto Sabalo, claiming that the Carolina Ramirez Front had threatened his life to gain more control over the region. In Bogota, he contacted Magdalena and said that she and the children were in danger too. And in the years since Magdalena had returned to Arapahoe, cocaine cartels and revolutionary groups had started to move their operations to more rural locations to avoid detection. And while in these largely indigenous areas, the groups would also recruit children into the cartel and commit violence against anyone who stood in their way. This issue stemmed from a power vacuum that was created following the mismanaged peace deal in 2016 between Colombia and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or FARC. In 2021, an indigenous person was killed every 4 days by either a cartel or revolutionary groups like FARC, as well as the Colombian state military. And obviously, this sowed a very, very deep distrust between indigenous communities like the Watotos and any armed group.
While Magdalena's parents urged her not to follow Manuel to Bogota, saying that Manuel is lying. Valencia even said she heard Magdalena sobbing while on the phone with Manuel. So without telling her parents, Magdalena packed up her things and took 13-year-old Leslie, 9-year-old Solaney, 4-year-old Tian, and 11-month-old Kristen to a small house next to the Arapahoe airstrip. And every day she begged Colombian soldiers on the airstrip to get them seats aboard a military flight near the country's capital. Manuel also called in, and the small family was finally given seats aboard flight HK-2803. And they were accompanied by an indigenous leader, Herman Mendoza, in San Jose del Guaviare before they drove to Bogota. The family boarded the plane on May 1st, 2023. Magdalena texted Manuel, "We are leaving now," as she held 11-month-old Kristen on her lap. According to journalist William Ralston, Hernando Murcia was, quote, the kind of pilot who flew routes that others wouldn't dare. Hernando worked for Avian Line Charter, an air taxi company dedicated to transporting people and supplies across the Amazon in Colombia, often being commissioned for small military flights aboard his single-propeller Cessna 206. Now, it's important to note just how dangerous many of these flights were. The landing strips, like the one in Araquara, were just clearings of dirt and gravel that were not up to the safety standards of Colombia's Civil Aviation Authority. More than that, the unpredictable weather and dense rainstorms often led pilots flying blind through lightning without the use of their radios. Can you imagine that? However, Hernando felt like he had seen it all in his 30 years that he had been working for Avian Line. In 2017, he even experienced total engine failure while in the air, forcing him to crash land on unfinished road, saving the lives of everyone on board. However, the Cessna 206 had quite a history before Hernando as well. It had completed thousands of hours in flight time since it was manufactured in 1982 and had actually crashed in 2021 before it's purchased by Avian Line. The propeller, engine, and wing all required massive repairs before it was safe to fly again. And on the morning of May 1st, Hernando carried out his pre-flight inspection and expected to transport representatives of Yauto, a carbon credit brokerage. However, members of the Colombian military told him that there had been a last-minute change to the passengers. He was instead going to be carrying Magdalena and her family. So Magdalena and her 4 children sat in the airplane's cabin, while Herman Mendoza sat next to Hernando in the cockpit. However, issues with the flight began the moment Hernando started the engines. A rainstorm had turned the dirt airstrip into thick mud, and the wheels wouldn't move. When the wheels started rolling, one hit a small divot, and the propeller bumped off the ground. Then, just before 7 a.m., the plane took off.
Although weather conditions had improved considerably since the storm and Hernando was flying through blue skies, something unknown went wrong with the engine. While flying over one of the densest parts of the entire Amazon, Hernando radioed air traffic control and he said, "Mayday, Mayday, 2803, my engine is idling. I'm going to look for a field." And air traffic control tried to direct him towards nearby rural airstrips, but his radio hit a dead zone. When he was able to speak again 15 minutes later, the engines had returned to working order. But then, only 8 minutes later, he radioed again. "Mayday, Mayday, 2803, 2803, my engine failed again." Hernando knew there would be no clearing in the rainforest beneath him to land the airplane safely, so he tried to find a bushy tree, as sometimes the surrounding flora could hold the plane without extreme damage. That's just how dense the rainforest is. However, he decided to change course, telling air traffic control that he was going to aim for a small river to the right. His last words over the radio were, "I am going to hit water." The radar tracked the plane as it took a sharp right turn before it completely disappeared at 7:50 a.m. Magdalena's parents didn't even know she had tried to fly out of Araquara, and they were horrified that she had been on board with 4 of their grandchildren. Valencia said, "I felt terrible, like I had a fever." Andres was devastated as he had just lost his father and couldn't fathom that he may have just lost his 2 youngest daughters as well. He said, "It hurts my soul." When Manuel learned that the plane had crashed en route to him, he immediately left for Cachiporo, where an indigenous search team was collecting volunteers. Back in Araquara, Diana, the sister of Herman Mendoza, and his cousin, Natalia Rodriguez, began gathering others in town for a search party. Natalia said, "When someone you love goes missing, you desperately want to find them. It's the hope that keeps you going." They then enlisted Watoto leader Henry Guerrero to direct a team of 5 men to try and find the crashed airplane. And while this first group set off into the jungle, Avian Line also created 2 search teams. However, only a short time after they headed out, the avian line group got lost and attempted to light a fire and grab the attention of a passing aircraft. But after wandering through the jungle, they stumbled across the hut of a man named Dumar. While Dumar tried to stay under the radar as he ran a secret cocaine operation, he allowed the avian line and indigenous volunteers to use his home as a headquarters in the thick jungle. Soon, Manuel and Edwin Packy, a representative of the Organization of Indigenous Peoples of the Colombian Amazon, and another cousin of Herman arrived at the hut. More volunteers arrived. As Dumar told them, he had seen the Cessna gliding over his hut at only a few hundred feet elevation and was headed east. In addition to Dumar's direction, the Cessna also broadcast its approximate location. However, it kept showing up several miles apart from its previous location, so some people thought that maybe a survivor had detached the beacon, the tracking beacon from the plane, and was now walking with it on foot. The Colombian state military also put together a search team headed by Pedro Sanchez, the leader of Colombia's Special Operations Joint Command. However, for the most part, these soldiers took on missions that involved capturing and or killing rebel leaders, narcos, and terrorists, and had never pulled off a search and rescue mission before. It probably comes as no surprise to you that I hate shopping, man. Well, I hate certain kinds of shopping. I don't like to go into stores to shop. It's just such a pain. And even online shopping, I did it for a while, and it just was like hit or miss, right? I'll go to a new store and I'll be like, oh, this looks sick. I'm going to buy it. I pick it up. I get, flies from the UK to my house and it gets here and it's too small or it just doesn't fit right or the quality's not there. And so it's just a huge pain. I have to then figure out how I'm going to ship it back there. And so it's just not fun. But Stitch Fix makes it fun to shop because you're not doing any of the shopping. Your personal stylist is setting you up with the coolest clothes in the game, brands and styles that I've never even seen or heard of before, but they are so fly that I am, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm just like, I'm going to have to throw out all my old clothes because Stitch Fix has got me looking swaggy over here. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. And my personal stylist at Stitch Fix knows what's up. They are in with the trends. They're on that TikTok style game. They're seeing what's going on in the fashion world. I don't want to look like an old dad. I know that's what I am, but I don't want to look like it. I want to look like a young 23-year-old that's just cruising around on a skateboard on his college campus, all right? I want to be cool. And so Stitch Fix has got me looking cool. They got me looking fresh. And anything that I don't want or I don't like, I just put in the prepaid envelope. I throw it into my mailbox and my lovely mail carrier comes by, picks it up and sends it back to him. It's so easy. It's so convenient. And it's honestly priced great. It saves me time, money, effort. I'm not crying in the dressing room anymore looking at these horrible clothes that I've picked out. It's just a better experience and you will love it. And I've got an offer for you. You can get started today at stitchfix.com/milehigher and you'll get $20, 20 buckaroos off your first order. And they'll waive your styling fee. What about that? That's stitchfix.com/milehigher. Get it today.
So the Air Force ended up seeing smoke rising from the forest near Cachiporo and assumed it was a fire lit by some potential survivors. So Pedro dropped rations near the smoke plume and began mapping a search area of 4 square miles with commandos walking in a pattern of triangles and zigzags. Then on May 6, 3 Black Hawk helicopters flew over the rainforest, complete with soldiers armed with M4s, hand grenades, and night vision goggles, fearing that they might find a rebel group hunkered down in the rainforest. 2 groups, Dragon 4 and Destructor 1, jumped into the northern section of the jungle, while the third team, Ares 3, searched along the Apaporis River. Now, in addition to the 11 soldiers, Ares 3 also had a search and rescue dog with them, a Belgian Malinois called Wilson. Captain Ender Montiel, who led Dragon 4, said the area was a virgin jungle, a jungle that one way or another had not been stepped on by human beings. And this is the jungle that these children are just hopefully out surviving in. The soldiers searched from 6 a.m. until the sun began to set and were constantly berated by rain and had food thrown at them by monkeys in the canopy above. And the soldiers were walking up to 6 miles a day during their search and only communicated using hand signals in case they were being watched or listened to by armed militia. Destructor 1 found the source of the smoke plume early in their mission. It was a fire set by the avian line volunteers before they found Dumar's hut. Now, this error was blamed on Pedro, as Valencia had been pressuring him to include the indigenous volunteers in his mission since the beginning. She said, "We as indigenous people know how to navigate the jungle and understand the unique spirits of each territory." However, in the beginning, Pedro was worried that the indigenous volunteers would disobey orders. And due to the recent killings of indigenous people by the military and other armed groups, they did not trust him either. And again, this wasn't without reason. A 2021 report suggested that the Colombian state military had killed over 6,400 civilians, many of them indigenous people. And they later announced that they were enemy combatants, which was a practice known as false positives. Elizabeth Dickinson of the International Crisis Group said, "There has been a sense on behalf of these communities that the military was absolutely not there to protect them. In fact, it was the opposite. They viewed them as a risk." In the beginning, both the military and indigenous searches kept their distance from one another. However, the military searchers had grown extremely tired after walking hundreds of miles in the endless jungle for 9 days straight. The only thing they had found was an abandoned FARC rebel camp, and some of them began to wonder what the point of this mission was. If the plane had crashed, surely everyone on board would have died, right? And there would be no one to rescue. However, on the morning of May 15th, Sergeant Wilmar Miranda saw something pink amongst the green jungle. And guess what it was? A baby bottle. Imagine seeing that just lying out there in the jungle. How thrown off you would be.
And hopeful.
Yeah. No,
So you're
well,
like, what?
I guess in their case, they're looking
Like-
for it. But still, at first, I think even in those circumstances, it'd be hard to put it all together and realize, oh my God, they might be alive out here.
Yeah.
So the soldiers ended up sending a photo of the bottle to Pedro, who showed it to Valencia, and she confirmed that this bottle belonged to 11-month-old Kristen. And the bottle contained cloudy water from the jungle. And since Kristen couldn't even walk yet, someone else had to have been alive to have filled it for her.
An 11-month-old out in the
11
Amazon
months.
rainforest.
I just cannot.
Drinking jungle water.
Yeah. And she has to be with one of her siblings, and it's,
Yeah.
they're not that old. It's just incredible. So a few hours later, Sergeant Miranda found some fruit with human bite marks. He said it was happiness and joy to see that. There was life. He tried to spot a trail in the jungle, but the consistent rain had washed away any potential tracks. Meanwhile, a few miles south of the military searchers, the indigenous searchers were also growing wary. Edwin Packey served as the group's leader, while others, including Manuel, went to Cachiporo for supplies. But Edwin had twisted his ankle and began to give up hope. Later in the day on May 15th, one of the indigenous searchers found something huge in the forest, the crashed Cessna.
The searchers gathered Edwin and others in the jungle to go and take a look at this plane, which had crashed in a nose-down position directly against the forest floor. The fuselage jutted from the ground like a flagpole, and the propeller was snapped off. They also noticed that the forest canopy was somehow untouched, completely covering the aircraft from the military helicopter searching from above. As the searchers approached the plane, they immediately recognized the scent of decomposing bodies. Even though it had only been 16 days, the Amazonian climate had reduced those aboard to only skeletal remains, just 16 days. Still, the indigenous searchers could identify Magdalena from her long hair and Hernando because he was still wearing his pilot's jacket. While Edwin couldn't find Herman or the children, he felt, quote, that nobody could have survived the crash. He recorded the plane's coordinates and saw some soldiers en route to Dumar's hut. Pedro ordered Dragon 4 to identify the bodies the next morning. And while walking to the site, Dragon 4 found a crude shelter made of leaves cut with a small pair of scissors discarded on the forest floor. The leaves still looked fresh, indicating that the shelter had been built recently. And in order to bind the leaves together, hair ties were used, which is pretty, creative. Like, that's just such a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Keep them all together.
Mm-hmm.
When Dragon 4 found the plane, they hoisted it using a winch and discovered 3 bodies, Magdalena, Hernando, and Herman. Which Herman, at first they weren't sure if he was in there, but he was in the crushed nose part of the plane and was likely decapitated on impact because it was just, if you look at the pictures of the crash, the plane front is just completely smashed.
Straight nosedive.
So the thought was maybe they'd catch enough, dense trees that it'd actually slow it down at least. But unfortunately, it seems like it went right through the canopy and crashed into the ground. And when Herman's brother Delio heard the news, he fell to the floor and shouted, "My little brother." But as the soldiers searched the aircraft, they began to realize something. The cabin door of the plane was open, and bags, luggage, and diapers were all over the ground. Dragon 4 thought that all 4 of the children had likely survived. So that moment they get there, they find the 3 adults are all dead. And then they realize, well, there's none of the children's are still here, but there's stuff everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it became very obvious that they left the site of the crash and also broke into the bags. Leading up to the departure, the 4 children were extremely excited to start their lives in the capital city of Bogota. They had never flown before, but they had told their friends that they were happy to go with their mother. However, as the plane fell only an hour after takeoff, it struck the forest canopy. The oldest child, Leslie, banged her head on the ceiling of the plane and lost consciousness. The first thing she heard when she woke up was Kristen crying from her mother's arms. Leslie shouted, "Mama, Mama," until she realized that Magdalena had died on impact. Leslie took Kristen from Magdalena's arms and used a diaper to stop the blood flowing from her own head wound. And at this point, she's still very disoriented, right? She just woke up from a plane crash. She's bleeding from her head. There's crash debris everywhere. And at that point, she knew that Hernando and Herman were also dead, including her mother.
All the adults around her. And she's got screaming children.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being in her shoes? And then to even have the thought to grab a diaper to absorb the blood.
So smart.
I mean, she just had the right skills for this.
Yeah. And then to find out, her siblings are still alive.
Yep.
Tien and Selene are completely unharmed.
Mm-hmm.
And Leslie was the only one of the 4 children who actually sustained an injury.
Yep.
And she's also the oldest. Leslie carried Kristen, Tien, and Selene out of the plane and then constructed a small camp using a towel as a mosquito net to keep the children dry. Because you have to remember, in the Amazon rainforest, it rains 16 hours a day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then, guess what comes after? Mosquitoes.
Yep.
I hate mosquitoes.
I know.
So you need a mosquito net in the rainforest. And she's using a towel just to try to create some shelter from the mosquitoes.
That's the least of her concerns too. They're still trying to probably wrap their minds around the fact that their mother just died in a tragic accident and they saw the end result. It's just horrible.
So for a while they waited, hoping that someone would spot the crash site from the air and find them. Tien kept asking when their mother would wake up, and Leslie, not wanting to break the news to a 4-year-old, said that she didn't know. Surviving in the Amazon is not the same as camping out in any other wilderness on Earth. Because, of course, the Amazon's got lots of creepy crawly things. There's poisonous plants. There's flowers that can kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention there's big cats, pumas, and
even
leopards.
Just fruit, too. Poisonous, eat the wrong thing. Bugs. Yep. Yeah, he did mention the bugs, but again, reiterating.
But there's decomposing human bodies inside the plane. So, of course, you got to wonder, and this was a thought that she had, was big cats could be coming. They're going to smell that. They're going to come look for it. A jaguar could come out of nowhere.
And that's just for her at that age to have that thought.
Yeah, but
everything she's been through.
Yeah, but also you have to remember they were literally raised.
No, I know, but just
in this life.
I guess it's hard to just imagine. I don't know, the human strength to do anything after going through something like this, physically. Like surviving a plane crash and then seeing your mother in that condition. I just can't imagine being able to process any thought.
Yeah. They also used rags to wrap their feet in order to protect them from the forest floor, because you imagine it's not soft. There's lots of things you can step on, vines and bugs and snakes, who knows what else. In addition to the makeshift shelters that they made, the children also found shelter inside of large tree trunks and under the forest canopy. But after over a week of waiting, Leslie feared that predators would be drawn to the site. So she grabbed some of her mother's clothes, farina, which is milled cassava flour, juice, soda, and candy. And she also packed some scissors, a first aid kit, diapers, and her sister's baby bottle. And then using the sun, Leslie led her siblings west through the jungle. They followed a stream for water, hoping to find crops and fruits that grew alongside. So that's how they got water. The only other food that they could find was fruit from milk trees, which actually have seeds that you can consume, and the fruit of a palm tree. And luckily for them, these fruits were actually in season during the time of the year that they crashed. Otherwise, most other plants in the jungle would be completely deadly for human consumption. So they got lucky that it just happened to be a time of year that some of these were actually fruiting, and they ate some other fruit that's kind of like an avocado. So luckily, the amount of biodiversity in the rainforest is, I think there's more biodiversity there than anywhere else on the planet. So there are a lot of things. But again, you have to be knowledgeable on what you're picking and eating.
Pick the wrong thing once and that's it.
Right. And this is where their indigenous upbringing and knowledge and culture really come in clutch for them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I believe the avocado fruit was the fruit of the palm tree. They described it as a mil peso. I think that's like the actual word for it. They said it's like the same consistency and size as an avocado. It's just like a very unique thing. I'm sure someone out there has had one.
Mil peso?
Mil peso, I believe is what they said, at least in the CBC news report.
Is it green like an avocado? Curious.
Yeah, I want to look it up.
It's known for its oily pulp, which can be used to make a creamy chocolate milk-like juice with a faint acai flavor.
Interesting.
It's also used to produce an oil similar to olive oil. Okay, so it's kind of a yellow. It looks like it's like yellowy. But definitely same kind of consistency when you cut it open. You can scoop it out.
Now, meanwhile, the military, they're ramping up their search now that they know that the kids are potentially alive out there. So they started this new, larger effort to find the children, codenamed Operation Hope. More troops and search dogs were now tracking the forest, and aircrafts dropped lighters, survival manuals, and food. Pedro thought the children might have seen the soldiers at some point, and fearing armed men, maybe they hid in the foliage to avoid contact. He asked their grandmother, Valencia, if she could record a message for the soldiers to play so that the children knew there were no issues. Valencia said, "I felt like crying, but strengthened my heart." She recorded a message simply saying, "I beg you, stay calm. The army is looking for you." And then the soldiers blasted that message from their helicopters. On May 17th, soldiers encountered a group of men in the jungle and feared they might be cartel members or rebels. However, they learned that the men were indigenous searchers that they had been avoiding. The soldiers then led the searchers back to their camp and gave them food, water, and supplies. Manuel was amongst this group, and he asked the soldiers if he could borrow one of their satellite phones to make a call. And he went ahead and called a fortune teller in Villa Vicencio. And the fortune teller told Manuel that if they headed west from the soldiers' camp for 270 yards, they would find a trail that would bring them to the children. The soldiers, many of them deeply Catholic, were very skeptical of the fortune teller. However, after following the instructions, they discovered some footprints. Then later that evening, the Belgian Malinois named Wilson chewed through his collar and unfortunately ran into the jungle. Soldiers looked for him, wondering if he could possibly pick up the children's trail. And in addition, a false report began circulating that the children had been found by one of the avian line groups and were on a boat. And the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, tweeted that they had found the children and it was a joy for the country, even though it was quickly determined to be a false rumor.
A glimmer of hope. Colombia's president tweeting that 4 children on board a single-engine aircraft that crashed in the jungle on May 1st had been found alive and well. Rescuers using scattered debris to trace them, but on Thursday, the president's tweet was deleted, saying the information, quote, could not be confirmed. Government officials blaming poor communication.
Then on May 19th, Pedro ordered all of his soldiers, who had walked hundreds of miles at this point, to increase their efforts and complete even more daily miles. And Pedro began wondering, I thought there was a different energy in the jungle that wasn't allowing the children to be rescued. Valencia had been telling the media that a duende had captured the children, and Pedro began consulting indigenous leaders he knew on ceremonies they could perform to help their search. And while these early ceremonies didn't lead to any new discoveries, they did mark a turning point in the collaboration between the indigenous searchers and the military. And at first, the soldiers were extremely untrustworthy of their indigenous counterparts, but now they were actively trying to learn about the jungle from those who had spent their entire lives there. Pedro also met with Giovanni Yule, a nationally respected indigenous figure. Their hug was the first time an indigenous leader had embraced a general, so pretty incredible moment. Giovanni also mustered members of various tribes to aid everyone else in the search.
I'm stoked to tell you about today's sponsor, Function, for a lot of reasons. But for one, Function is giving me access to data about my health I would otherwise have never seen without them. We're talking over 160 biomarkers that you can test for, from heart and hormones to toxins, inflammation, and stress. You can also access multi-region MRI and CT scans, all tracked in one secure place over time. Function allows you to get a full 360-degree view of your body, what's going on inside your body, And I just did my first blood test about a week ago. And that whole process in itself was very, very easy. You booked it all online. It was at a local clinic at my local hospital. Great experience overall. You know, I'm not great at getting my blood drawn, so I have to lay down, and they brought me an ice pack, and it was honestly perfect. It was the best experience I've ever had getting my blood drawn, because that take a decent amount of blood, right, to run all of these different tests. At the time of this recording, I'm getting my next blood draw tomorrow. So once I have those 2 blood draws, I'll be able to get 100 plus biomarkers tested and get my full results. But just from my first test alone, I already got some very interesting data points in here, including my biological age, which is actually, to my surprise and delight, 9.2 years younger than my calendar age. So I am 32 years old, and according to Function, my biological age is 23.6. Beautiful. That just put a smile on my face, made me feel good, and fortunate that I am very, very healthy. I didn't even know that you could really figure this out. So if you're not familiar with what biological age is, it is the indicator of the quality and rate of aging on a genetic, cellular, and molecular level. Faster biological aging increases the risk of diseases associated with aging, and then lists off a bunch. Because as you biologically age, you gradually accumulate a bunch of different things, right? Our bodies start breaking down, essentially. But it's good to know that my body is doing well. It also told me what foods to eat, some recommendations for another one of the tests, including I need to eat more dark chocolate, pasture-raised eggs, and pickles were in my top 5. And I was not mad at that at all. So as a part of your Function Health membership, you're automatically getting access to 100 plus biomarkers. Then there's additional tests that you can do to get access to even more data that, again, your primary care doctor is likely never going to test you for, because it's just not a part of the routine sort of checkups, and you're going to get far more information on your health than anywhere else. So I am super excited to get my full results, and they'll have a clinician actually write up notes to help explain all the different data points that I'm seeing in my Function Health dashboard, which will be really nice to understand it. So I'll have further updates in the future. But yeah, Function is a really, really great service. You should definitely check it out. We have a special offer for you. Right now, you can learn more and join using our link. The first 1,000 get a $100 credit toward their membership. So take advantage of that. Visit www.functionhealth.com/milehigher or use gift code milehigher100 at sign up to own your health. And by May 24th, 92 indigenous searchers and 113 soldiers were combing the Amazon, many of them in combined groups. Pedro ordered his soldiers to follow the indigenous searchers according to their beliefs, a marked difference from the beginning of the search operation. And throughout the next 2 days, they discovered diapers, a pair of running shoes, children's footprints, and what seemed to be dog prints that appeared to walk beside them, which is cool that this dog likely found them and then just hung out with them. On May 26th, baby Kristen's first birthday, the searchers sang her happy birthday, even though they still did not know where she or her siblings could be. And by early June, the searchers had grown exhausted, with many having walked over 1,000 miles in the previous month, let alone through the Amazon rainforest, which I've heard some, people talk about, like American soldiers who've hiked through the Amazon before through like military training exercises. They said it's unreal. There's like no place like it. It's extremely difficult. But they began hanging whistles and speakers in the jungle, hoping the children would blow on them to reveal their location. Pedro told the media, "It's not like finding a needle in a haystack. It's like finding a tiny flea in a huge rug that moves in unpredictable directions." June 4th marked an 8-day break for some of the soldiers. As they were leaving, an indigenous man named Jose Rubio asked the soldiers if they could secure him some ayahuasca for the search. Well, it was certainly a very odd request for the soldiers. They ended up securing him some ayahuasca, and they had it flown from Arapahoe. The cousin of Herman Mendoza, Natalia Rodriguez, actually chartered that plane in order to bring the ayahuasca to the searchers personally. And on June 7th, they began the first ayahuasca ceremony. Even Manuel, the younger children's father, took some, but it had no effect. The next day, only 16 indigenous searchers were still on the ground, and many of them were battling pneumonia and hadn't eaten in days. In the early morning hours of June 9th, Jose drank some ayahuasca himself as a last resort. And for the next 45 minutes, Jose was tripping. He was hallucinating. And during those hallucinations, he actually met the children along with a duende that was holding them. And Jose told this spirit that he would take the children, and it agreed as long as it could cast a spell on the searchers. And as Jose returned to reality, he told the other searchers that they would find the children that day. So after having this very intense psychedelic experience with the ayahuasca, he was like, we're going to find them today. So 3 volunteers left for the jungle unaccompanied by the exhausted soldiers. And as they started their journey, they found a red-footed tortoise. And in Watoto culture, if a tortoise is found while hunting, the hunters will be given a wish if the animal is released afterwards.
I just got chills.
Red-footed tortoise, man. So they picked up the tortoise and said, all right, turtle, you're going to help me find the kids. You either help me or I'll eat your liver.
Hey.
And then they strapped that tortoise to their backs and carried it up a steep hill. And as the sun set, they still trusted Jose's words that they were going to find the children that day. And literally 10 minutes later, as the men reached a clearing, they heard a baby crying. And we actually have a little bit of footage of the moment they found the children alive. Let's roll it.
Just the timing of it all is so
It's amazing.
incredible.
It's just like, what? It's magical.
I know. These poor
Encontramos los niños
kids.
ya.
Encontramos los
Encontramos los niños. Yo, bendito sea mi Dios.
Bendito sea Dios.
Nosotros
Tian can
encontramos los
hardly
niños ya.
stand.
Dios los ha
He
bendecido
really
con
just
esa
can't.
promesa y
No,
he couldn't stand up the end.
Is
Leslie
with
and-
himself, just by
la
himself.
Fuerza
Yeah, so weak.
Armada Colombiana.
no las farles, las otras locales. Sí, abrimos. O sea, yo creo que abramos acá. La menor es la que tiene usted, hermano.
Sí, la que tengo allá. Esta es la de 1 año.
Venga, vea. Tienen que llegar el papá.
¿Ah, sí? Sí, claro. Esa es la, sí. Y el abuelo también tiene que...
Está golpeado.
No le dé tanto dulce, no le dé tanto dulce.
No, es suero, es suero.
suero.
Un poquito de suero que le estamos dando nomás.
Este también es suelo.
Sí.
Ahora va
Sí,
el
siente el
papá.
niño, siéntelo.
Wow. They're so
¿Qué sacarle
nation is crazy.
Tiene que sacarle la basura aquí detrás del monte, entonces
Very
tiene que soplarlo antes de sacarlo de acá.
Ya como que otra que recupera energía.
Los niños deben tener frío, loco.
Imagine the shock when they first saw them, too.
Yeah.
Just-
So this, the searchers are just giving them some type of pink liquid, just trying to hydrate them a little bit. I think they
Mhm.
gave them a tiny bit of food. Obviously, you can't give them a ton of food, but just kind of there giving them some care before carrying them out of the jungle.
Mhm.
It's incredible. Again, this is a 13-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 4-year-old, and an 11-month-old.
It's incredible.
Insane.
40 days.
After going down on a plane,
Mm-hmm.
crashing,
All your adults are dead.
watching your mother die, and then carrying on all 4 of you in a fucking jungle.
Yep.
Think of how dark it is out there at night, dude.
I
You
know.
can't see shit.
Leslie deserves an award, more recognition.
Oh my
like,
God, it's
you know,
incredible.
And everyone involved in the search, incredible for them too. But I kind of bothered me that at the end there was this big parade in the documentary. There's this big parade for everyone involved in the search, but the kids weren't even there. And I'm sure that's the
Yeah.
last thing they would want to do is be out there. But I wish they could have been honored because truly their time out there had to have been. I can't even imagine what it was like. And we actually don't know that much about what their time was like.
When the men first saw Leslie and Selene, they told them not to fear as they knew the Muktai family. Leslie held baby Kristen and the men asked where their little brother was, and they pointed to a small shelter where he was lying inside. He said to the men, "My mom is dead," with tears in his eyes. None of the children could physically stand. The men released the tortoise and now ran the children several miles back to camp with a new burst of energy, feeding them along the way. When they reached the camp, Jose blew tobacco smoke on the children to cleanse any spirits, and they radioed commands saying, "Miracle, miracle, miracle." The children were rescued after 40 days lost in the jungle,
God.
and the men believed that they would not have survived even a single day more.
Yeah.
So they were very
40
close to the
days.
end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Found them just in time.
Like, I think it's crazy too. Like just as we've been going through this, all of the searchers too are getting pneumonia. They're twisting their ankles. Like even these full-grown men, and many of them also very experienced in the forest, are still getting really severely fucked up by it. It's like, it's crazy that these children could do it on their own.
It makes you think that there was something divine protecting them out there.
Yeah.
You know, like how can you not look at this in a spiritual way and just how did they do this? All 4 of them alive? It's amazing.
It is a miracle.
It is a miracle.
For sure.
Yeah. Now, like I said, we don't know much about their experience out there because the children have never been interviewed. I'm sure maybe one day. I don't know. We can only hope. I'd love to know more. But she does explain some of it. Some of it is explained in the documentary, just a few details.
Right. She gave like a report to the military, and then so some of that has been made available, but no proper media interviews.
Yeah, which that's the last thing that she's concerned about, I'm sure, and her family. But she explained to the soldiers that they were able to find some of the airdropped food. I'm glad they got some of it. And she said that she was never scared until she heard her grandmother's voice over the speakers, and she thought it was like some type of spirit. So that sort of didn't work out the way that they were hoping. They also hid from the soldiers, afraid that they were members of the group that threatened their family, which totally makes sense. However, all of the children reported that a dog accompanied them for several days until it ran back into the forest. And Solaney and Leslie drew pictures of the dog and said that was their protector. And the drawings do look like Wilson, who actually, sadly, was never seen again. But even when they were found, the children, understandably, were still scared of the searchers in the bush and tried to remain quiet. If baby Kristen hadn't have cried, they may have been lost out there forever. And in addition to the miracle of just finding the children, the operation proved to be a rare point of unity between the indigenous Colombians and the state. Even the Carolina Ramirez Front released a statement celebrating the children's rescue. However, after the children were released from the hospital, they were placed in an institution. Manuel announced that he wanted full custody, but thankfully, he was arrested after new evidence came out about his abuse of Magdalena and the children. It was revealed that he had attacked Magdalena with a machete while she was holding baby Kristen, an event that led to him losing governorship. Thank God. He also had thrown Magdalena from a balcony while she was pregnant, abused Solaney, and may have even sexually abused Leslie. And as of 2024, he was still in jail awaiting trial. God, what a fucking phony for him to get out there and act like he cares about his kids.
Scum.
Just purely for attention.
I think he was like definitely for attention and also just watching his own ass. Like he's a political person, you know, regardless of his status as an indigenous person, but he wants the governorship back. He wants some sort of influence in Bogota. So, you know, he's absolutely doing this for attention and to be like, look, I'm a good father.
Such a great dad. I'm out here in the Amazon looking for my kids.
So concerned.
I'm just so grateful, though, that they figured that out, because if the kids had gone back to him and then Magdalena wasn't even there anymore, like, it just would have been horrible.
Who knows? After surviving all of that, they may not have survived their own father. But it also makes you wonder, if this event hadn't happened, would he have ever been held responsible for his abuse against Magdalena?
I don't think he would have, sadly.
I don't think so either.
Just for the fact that, like, I mean, it's no secret that a lot of abuse goes unreported, and even when it is reported, no one does anything about it. So I kind of think this might have been a large reason as to, you know, why he's in jail right now.
Yeah.
Well, I also think, you know, Valencia in the beginning was telling Magdalena that, you know, he was lying about the Carolina Ramirez Front trying to kill him and the family.
Yeah.
And even though there's no proof to suggest otherwise, it still seems like it was more like the people in Puerto Zabalo were realizing that he was this abusive monster, which is why he lost the governorship. And he was basically just running away from the abuse and was creating this lie so he would still have the family in his back pocket.
Yeah.
Again, it could still be the truth, but that's
highly doubtful.
Yeah.
And Magdalena's sisters and her whole family believe that the children were also didn't want to be found because they didn't want to go back to him, essentially. So, I mean, just that's how bad he was, that they'd rather be out in the forest.
Well, I think it was that, but also they were well aware that there's rebel groups and armed people.
Yeah,
like to
I
them,
think that was part of it too.
They're just scared. There's armed people walking around. They don't know if they're there for them or not.
But
per
their
se.
family said that
Yes,
they think the
right.
main reason was because they were afraid of their father.
Yeah. Because I think at some points they were like 20 to 50 meters, like in distance from the children.
But they're just staying quiet.
And they were just staying quiet. They were kind
Yeah.
of hiding from the searchers out there.
Because they were wondering, why is this taking us so long to find them?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they didn't want to be found, it seemed.
Because this was like the biggest search, like search and rescue mission in like Colombian history, pretty much. It was like insane.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of resources that was poured into this to find these children was unprecedented.
Also, I believe the children, like when they mapped their final movements, it was like they had really only, for the 40 days, only walked around 8 square miles from the crash site. But they were just walking in circles because, again, they were kind of avoiding these guys.
Yeah.
They for whatever, I mean, for Manuel, but
seemed like a couple different reasons.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's just, thank God that they found them when they did, or I don't think they would have survived. But as of recent English language reporting, the children were still in the Institute's care, awaiting a decision on whether they would be returned to their grandmother or Magdalena's first husband. And Valencia said that while the children survived, it was the duende who kept them lost, not the rainforest. So I guess it depends on who you talk to in their family too and what they believe. Everyone seems to have a different take on what exactly happened.
Yeah, I found a little update from, this is as of summer 2024, but this is from the government agency whose care they're under right now. It says that as of summer 2024, Leslie, Tian, Selene, and Kristen are still under government care. And they posted an update on them 1 year after they were found, saying that they spend their days enjoying and learning. The children have reportedly overcome the physical ailments they acquired in the jungle and are working with psychologists to treat the emotional trauma of the ordeal. Leslie, Tian, Selene, and Kristen have not been separated since their rescue, which is
what
good.
A relief.
They have always supported each other and in the company of their families as well as people who love and protect them. They pursue their studies and enjoy the life that boys and girls should have at that age.
That's amazing.
So it seems like they're back in school, back with their friends, back playing sports again, and just trying to live a normal childhood.
At least as of now, the best possible outcome for them.
Yeah.
God, it's amazing.
And hopefully Manuel stays far away.
That fuck.
What an incredible story, though.
It really is.
It's it just shows you just how resilient children are. Children are tough, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're far tougher. That's what we've learned as parents too. Is just our daughter is so tough for I
don't know if she could survive in the rainforest though.
Yeah,
these kids are like built different. I don't know.
They're built different and they've been taught as well.
Yeah.
We haven't taught her anything like that.
Nothing, absolutely nothing.
But she's resilient in her own way. All children are resilient in their own way, their own environment. There's children that grow up in.
They're stronger than you think.
Totally.
More durable and more resourceful.
Maybe sometimes more so than adults.
Yeah.
In certain circumstances, I feel like.
Yeah. And it's also, Valencia believes that the rainforest also became sort of like their mother after Magdalena died and sort of protected them from the spirit until they were finally rescued, which is really interesting to think about.
Well, yeah, I think because that is, aside from the cassava flour that they were able to take from the plain, like that was their source of sustenance. That was their source of water, everything, shelter. Like, yes, it was extremely dangerous, but it was the only thing they could rely on to survive. So in that way, it did become like a mother.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is how they survived.
It's interesting on that thought too, because what really makes me think hard on this is when Jose does ayahuasca, right? And so ayahuasca is also called Mother Ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And it's known to be like a parenting type figure, like a grandmother spirit, can be kind of a guardian, so to speak. And so it's very interesting to me that knowledge was gained seemingly from the ayahuasca experience that ultimately gave them that, like, no, let's get back out there and we're going to find them today. It's almost as if there is something spiritual happening, maybe Mother Ayahuasca has something to do with it, which
God, that is really crazy to think about.
Pretty nuts that, here we have an example of, a divine spirit being involved in some way.
It's like all the right people and experiences fell into place at the right time for them to be found just at the last moment.
Yeah, especially after all the extensive searching and all the resources around this. But as soon as you tap into spirit, things started unfolding.
I mean, as much as you like try to think of it as from a more logical standpoint, you can't help but go back to the spiritual sides.
You can't deny it, man. You can't deny it, and I think the indigenous people of the Amazon are tapped into.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
The spirit of the rainforest and are really in tune with it, and I think that is clearly evident in this story.
Well, I love that at the end, it's the indigenous people that were able to retrieve.
Not the military, not all these helicopters and loudspeakers and everything.
No. The loudspeakers made it worse.
Probably kept them away. Yeah,
it did. They were scared.
Yeah.
It reminds me of what Jacobo Greenberg in that episode 2 weeks ago,
totally.
what he was saying about, the real way to kind of combat Western colonialism. That's like his overall goal, but is to tap into indigenous practices wherever you are. And so, like, despite the fact that I think the military is commendable in this one instance for working with the indigenous people, like just as you guys said, the tactics that found them were the indigenous tactics, not the military Black Hawk helicopters, hand signals, everything.
Yep. It's the knowledge of the environment and the spirits.
These guys have something to offer and something to gain from. There's so much knowledge and connection to be taken away from just immersing yourself with indigenous peoples anywhere. I truly believe.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, we had the opportunity to sit with an Aboriginal man in Australia, and that was such a cool experience. And just, I don't know, that
was like 10 years ago.
It's a whole other level of connection
They're just
that they have
so in tune
with the earth and everything that lives in it. It's truly amazing. So I think this is a great example of that.
And then when you think about, the idea that the rainforest really is acting as a parental role to these kids, that whatever it is, finally felt comfortable enough to release them to indigenous people. Like, would they have even, if it was...
And it was the 11-month-old crying.
I know.
What are the chances?
It's seriously incredible.
Because, and again, they were perhaps hours, if not a day away from potentially just succumbing to the elements. And this all unfolded it's just so perfect that you're just like, how is this not divine? I don't know.
It just has to be. Well, I definitely recommend that you all check out the documentary.
Yes.
It's so well done and really demonstrates all of this in a really powerful, artistic way. Like Josh said, the music's incredible. The visuals are beautiful.
Tons of footage from the actual search.
Tons of footage is unbelievable.
Yeah. Ian and I were talking about that before, how thankfully they even thought to get all that footage, especially because at first they were pretty hopeless that these children were actually out there alive. And if they didn't find them, well, would they probably have done nothing with the footage? But it's cool to see it all.
And it's again, the overarching story is like unity and connection. It's like, we aren't different from each other. Let's come together for a common good and look at what we can accomplish. And if we respect those that maybe you think are different, because one of the points that gets brought up is the fact that a large population of Colombia, especially within the military, is Catholic. And so their religious beliefs are very, very different from, the indigenous people. And so there was a mutual respect given during this whole operation. And that was really cool to see, because in historical past, they definitely look at the indigenous people in a different light. And, back to what Ian said, colonialism and, trying to spread Catholicism all over these countries down there, where these indigenous people's cultures have been there from the very beginning and are so unique and deeply spiritual in a whole other way that it's upsetting that gets pushed down and overrun by other religions that kind of come in and try to just eradicate it. It's very sad, because I think there's so much to be learned. And another person who has firsthand knowledge of this that we talked to on the show in the past, Graham Hancock. He's he's been down here. He's been in these cultures, and he very much preaches the same thing. Is like, it's their connection to spirit is so so unique and special, and there's something truly to that we're all missing here in the Western world. And
very spiritually disconnected. That seems obvious.
So I don't know. It's beautiful.
It is.
It's truly beautiful.
Definitely check it out, you guys. That's going to be it for today's episode of Mile Higher Podcast. We'll be back next week, but until then,
keep on taking your mind a mile higher.